Good morning, children. Let's now discuss about human settlements. Okay, so here we are going to discuss about urbanization in India. Okay, so here is a line graph which shows you the trend of urbanization in India. So on the x-axis, so we have the years, okay, and on the y-axis we have the percentage of urban population. So if you look, we find from 1961 to 2011, there's not been much of an increase in the percentage of urban population. So from 1961 to 1971, there's been a very slight increase in urban population. Okay, from 1971 to 1981, from 18.2% to 23.3%, there has been some sort of a increase in percentage of urban population. And from 1981 to 1991, it has increased from 23.3% to 25.7%. And from 1991 to 2001, it is increased from 25.7 to 27.8. And from 2001 to 2011, it is increased from 27.8 to 31.2%. So if you look, we find there's not been much of an increase in the percentage of urban population. Okay. So in other words, we can say the trend, or in other words, the percentage of urban population has been, growing at a, slow pace when we compare it with other developed countries of the world. Okay, so how do you measure level of urbanization? So the level of urbanization is measured in terms of percentage of urban population to total population. That is, what's the percentage of people living in the urban areas to the total population. So that is how we measure the level of urbanization. Okay, so here's we have some questions for which we have to go back to the graph that we had done just now. Okay, what was the percentage of urbanization in 1961? Okay, so here look at that. In 1961, the percentage of urban population was 18.0, that is 18. So the percentage of urban population or percentage of urbanization in India in 1961 was 18%. In which decade was urbanization the highest? Okay, so in which decade? That is the period of 10 years. Okay, so if you look from 1971 to 1981, that's the only decade wherein there was some increase. Okay, so from 18.2 it is increased to 23.3. So in all the other years we find there's not been much of a remarkable increase in urban population. It's only in this period from 1971 to 1981. Okay, so urbanization was highest in this decade, that is in the period from 1971 to 1981. In which decade was the growth of urbanization lowest? Okay, so get back to the graph here. So compared to the others, we find in 1961 to 1971, the percentage increase from just 18 to 18.2%. Okay, too low when you compare it with the other years. Okay, so in which decade was the growth of urbanization the lowest? The growth of urbanization was lowest in the period from 1961 to 1971. Okay, so looking at the graph, I think you would have understood that the growth of urbanization in India has been very, very slow. Okay, And the level of urbanization in India in 2011 was 31.616%, which was very low. Okay, let's get back to the graph again. Okay, so 2000 and see that in 2011 we find it was 31.2. Okay, so the level of urbanization in India in the year 2011 was 31.16%, which is very low. Okay, but at the same time we find there has been an increase in urban population. People have been moving over from the rural areas to urban areas in search of employment. Okay, so there has been an increase in urban population, and hence we find there has been an increase in urban centers. New towns and cities have developed. There has been an increase in towns and cities. So we find all these factors, that is increase in urban population and also expansion of urban centers and the emerging new towns have all played a very important and significant role in the growth of urban population. And we find there has been urbanization in the country. But if you look at India as a whole, we find urbanization has been more in the southern part of India. Okay? Then Goa, for example, is the most urbanized state in India. And 62% of population in Goa live in urban areas. So the most urbanized state in India is Goa. Okay, and you will also find that urbanization is more in the southern part of India, because you find, see, one very important factor for urbanization is climate. Okay, when you compare it with the northern part of India, the climate in southern part is better, okay, and favorable. That is why we find more number of people. There has been actually a movement, a mass movement of people from northern part of India to southern part. Okay, so in the recent years we find there's also been an increase in like Nasik, then Goa you find, then even Bangalore. Okay, so IT centers have emerged. Okay, so we find this, all these are because of better living conditions and also because of favorable climate. So we find there has been say a movement of people from northern part of India to southern part due to all these favorable factors. Now, in Delhi, 80% of the population live in urban areas. Okay, urbanization is also more in the states of Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, Gujarat, and Kerala. Okay, then low levels of urbanization. I think we have discussed in the previous lesson. Okay, where we find urbanization can be affected due to the terrain, climate, then availability of water, etc. So if we look at all these states like say Himachal Pradesh, Jammu and Kashmir, Uttarakhand, etc., we find terrain plays a very important role here. So you find these are regions of uneven terrain and where we find there is a difficulty in laying down roads. Okay, so that's one reason why urbanization is low in these regions. And again, if you take Rajasthan, for example, most of the Rajasthan is covered with the desert or the Thar desert we have in Rajasthan. So where conditions like the climate is not favorable. So that's one. And again, availability of water. Okay, so that's the reason why urbanization is low in Rajasthan. Okay, then now when you consider the Indian subcontinent, we find India has a very long history of a rich and great civilization. For example, all of us have studied about the Indus Valley civilization, okay? So, which flourished on the bank of the river Indus. So, likewise, we find if you take, the country of, say, Egypt, which, was famous for the Nile Valley civilization, or, say, Tigris and Euphrates, which Iraq, okay, which flourished on the banks of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. For example, we find great civilizations have flourished on the banks of rivers. Okay, so since ages we find there has been, increase in population on the banks of famous, of rivers, etc. Okay, so since ages we find the population of this continent has been living on the banks of rivers, plateaus and mountains. Okay, now if we take, there are, many, since ancient times we find there has been, growth of urban centers due to one reason or the other. Say, for example, Nalanda, Takshila, etc. Nalanda was a famous center of learning, okay, in ancient times. Okay, Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, for example, had flourished on the banks of the river Indus. Python is famous for its saris, and again you find Varanasi, which again, it's a cultural center. Then you take, okay, then Bangalore, for example, which has developed as an IT center. So you find these centers have become, important due to some reason or the other. So you find there has been an increase in population and in these regions. Okay, this shows that India has a rich and great tradition of urbanization. So you find there has been a growth in cities, okay, due to, either be it being a cultural center or even an educational or an IT hub, okay. So you find they have become famous due to one reason or the other. Okay, this itself shows that India has a great and rich tradition of urbanization. Okay, now here is a small activity for you. This is choose the correct option. States in India having less population, four options are given to you. Out of that, you'll have to select the one which has less option. I mean less population. Okay. Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Uttarakhand, Bihar. The second one, Bihar, Assam, Himachal Pradesh, Odisha. Maharashtra, Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, Kerala. The fourth is Goa, Mizoram, Odisha, Assam. So out of the four, the states in India having less population is Bihar, Assam, Himachal Pradesh and Odisha. The second question, states and urban territories of India having most urbanization. Goa, Puducherry, Daman and Diu, Lakshadweep. Second one, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Rajasthan, Bihar. C, Assam, Mizoram, Gujarat, Lakshadweep. And the fourth is Jharkhand, Uttar Pradesh, Meghalaya, Punjab. Okay, so of the four, which is the correct option? Okay, states and urban territories of India having most urbanization. The correct answer is Goa, Puducherry, Daman Lakshadweep. Okay, children? So, here we have finished urbanization in India. In the next session, we'll discuss about urbanization in Brazil. Thank you, children.